Chapter 20 Epilogue. It is time now for a lonely man to conclude his narrative, without bitterness, but without resignation. I have never surrendered the hope that some day, somehow, I might return to Gor, our counter-Earth. These final sentences were written in a small apartment in Manhattan, some 6 floors above the street. The sounds of playing children carrying through that open window. I have refused to return to England. I will remain in this country from which I departed years ago for that distant world which holds what I most love. I can see the blazing sun this July afternoon, and know that behind it, counterposed with my own native planet, lies another world. And I wonder if on that world a girl, now a woman, thinks of me, and perhaps too of the secrets that I have told her that lie beyond her sun, Tortugu, light upon the homestone. My destiny had been accomplished. I had served the will of the priest-kings. The shape of a world had been altered. The rivers of a planet's history turned to new channels. Then, no longer needed, I was discarded. Perhaps the priest-kings, whoever, whatever they might be, reasoned that such a man was dangerous, that such a man might in time raise his own banner of dominion. Perhaps they realized that I, of all on Gor, did not revere them, would not turn and bow my head in the direction of the Sardar Mountains. Perhaps they envied me the flame of my love for Talina. Perhaps in the cold recesses of the Sardar Mountains, their intelligences could not accept that this vulnerable, perishable creature was more blessed than they, in their wisdom and in their power. Do I believe partly to my arguments and the prestige of what I had done? Unprecedented lenience was shown to the surrendered armies of Parkour. The homestones of the 12 tributary cities were returned, and those men who had served Parkour from those cities were allowed to return to their cities, rejoicing. The large contingent of mercenaries who had flocked to his banner were kept as work-slaves for a period of a single year, to fill in those vast ditches and siege tunnels, to repair the extensive damage to the walls of Ar, and to rebuild those of its buildings that had been injured or burned upon the fighting. After their year of servitude they were returned, weaponless, to the cities of their birth. The officers of Parkour, instead of being impaled, were treated simply in the manner as common soldiers, to their relief, if to their scandal. Those members of the caste of assassins, the most hated caste on Gor, who had served Parkour, were taken in chains down to the Vosk, to become galley slaves upon the cargo ships that ply Gor's oceans. Oddly enough, the body of Parkour himself was never recovered from the foot of the cylinder of justice. I assumed that it was destroyed by those angry citizens of Ar. Marlenius, in spite of his heroic role in the victory, submitted himself to the judgment of Ar's Council of High Castes. The sentence of death passed upon him by the usurping government of the Initiates was rescinded, but because of his imperialistic ambition that was mostly feared, he was exiled from his beloved city. Such a man as Marlenius could never be second in a city, and the men of Ar were determined that he should never again be first. Accordingly, the Ubar, tears in his eyes, was publicly refused bread and salt, and under the penalty of death was ordered to leave Ar by sundown, never again to come within 10 parasangs of his city. With some 50 followers, who loved him even more than their native walls, he fled upon Tarnback to the Volta range, from whose peaks he could always look upon those distant towers of Ar. There, I suppose, to this day, in that inhospitable vastness, he reigns. In those scarlet mountains of Volta, Merlinus still rules, a laurel among men, an outlaw king, to his followers always the Ubar of Ubars. The free cities of Gor appointed Kazrak, my sword brother, to be temporary administrator of Ar, for it was he who, with the help of my father and Sanna of Thentis, had rallied the cities to raise the siege. His appointment was confirmed by Ar's Council of High Castes, and his popularity in the city is such that it seems probable that in the future the office will be his by free election. In our democracy is a long-forgotten way of life that will require a careful remembering. When I returned to Korbar with Talina, a great feast was held. We celebrated our free companionship, and a holiday was declared, the city ablaze with light and song. Shimmering strings of bells pealed upon the wind, and festival lanterns of 1,000 colors swung from those innumerable flower-strewn bridges. There was shouting, there was laughter, and the glorious colors of the castes of Gor mingled equally in the cylinders. Gone for the night was even the distinction of master and slave, and many a wretch in bondage would see the dawn as a free man. To my delight, even Torm of the Castle of Scribes appeared at the tables. I was honored that the little scribe had separated himself from his beloved scrolls long enough to share in my happiness, only that of a simple warrior. He was wearing a new robe and sandals, perhaps for the first time in years. He clasped my hands, and to my wonder, the little scribe was crying. And then in his joy he turned to Talina, and in a gracious salute lifted the symbolic cup of Colonna to her beauty. Talina and I swore to honor that day as long as either of us lived, and I have tried to keep that promise. I know that she has done so as well. That night, that glorious night, was a night of flowers, torches, and Colonna wine, and late, after sweet hours of love, we fell asleep in each other's arms. I awoke, perhaps a week later, stiff and chilly in the mountains of New Hampshire, near the flat rock on which the silver spacecraft had landed. I was now wearing the so crude-seeming camp clothes I had originally worn. Men can die, but not of a broken heart, for if that were possible, I would be dead. I had doubted my sanity. I was terrorized that I had occurred had been only a bizarre and twisted dream. I sat alone in the mountains, my head cradled in my hands. But slowly, with agony, I began to believe that it had indeed been nothing but the cruelest of dreams, and that I now was once again coming to my senses. I could not believe this in my heart of hearts, but my mind, forcefully and coolly, required this conclusion. I struggled to my feet, my heart torn out of me with grief. But there, on the ground near my boot, I saw it. A small object. Tiny, round object. I fell upon my knees, snatching it up, and my eyes burst out with tears, my heart knowing the full sweep of the saddest joy that can overwhelm a man. In my hand I held a ring of red metal, a ring that bore the crest of Cabot, the gift of my father. I cut my hand on the ring to make myself bleed, and I laughed with joy as I felt the pain, and I saw my blood. The ring was real. I was awake, and there was a counter-earth, and upon it a girl, Talina. When I emerged from the mountains, I found I had been gone 7 long months. It was simple enough to feign amnesia, and what other account of those 7 months would my world accept? I spent a few days in a public hospital, under observation, and then was allowed to leave. I decided to take up quarters, at least temporarily, in New York. My position at the college, of course, been filled, and I had no desire to return. There would be too many explanations. I sent my friend at the college a belated check for his camping equipment, which had been destroyed with that blue envelope in the mountains, and very kindly he arranged for my books and other belongings to be sent to my new address. When I arranged for the transfer of my bank business, I was surprised, but not too surprised, to discover that my savings in my absence had been mysteriously augmented, and quite handsomely. I have not been forced to work since my return from that counter-earth. To be sure, I have worked, but only that I wished and for so long as I wanted. I have given much time to traveling, to reading, to keeping myself fit. I have even joined a fencing club to keep my eye alert and my wrist strong, though the puny foils we use are the sorry weapons compared to those broadswords of Gor. Strangely, though it has now been 6 years since I left the counter-earth, I can discover no sign of aging, no physical alteration in my appearance. I have puzzled this, trying to connect it with that mysterious letter, dated in the 17th century, ostensibly by my father, which I received in the blue envelope. Perhaps the serums of the cast of physicians, so skilled on Gor, have something to do with this, but that I cannot tell. 2 or 3 times a year I return to the mountains of New Hampshire. I look again upon that great flat rock, and I spend a night there, in case I might see once again a silver disk in the sky, in case once again I might be summoned by those priest-kings to that other world. But if I am so summoned, they will do so with the understanding that I am resolved to be a pawn no longer in their vast games. Who or what the priest-kings, that they should so determine the lives of others, that they should rule a planet, terrorize the cities of a world, and commit men to the flame death, tear lovers from each other's arms. No matter how fearful their power, they must be challenged. If I should once again walk those green fields of Gor, I know that I should attempt to solve the riddle of the priest-kings, that I would enter the Cedar Mountains, that I would confront them, whoever or whatever they might be.